Fenimores are short, just FYI. My dad was my height. My grandfather was my height. My sister's 4'11". She lies and says she's 5 feet tall. Can you hear me okay? Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right, so there are a few things that are in my blood, one of which is writing. Like, I cannot escape that writing is in my blood. James Fenimore Cooper, it was also in his blood. He wrote Last of the Mohicans. Louisa May Alcott, in my blood. Fenimores were farmers. We settled Peru, Iowa. My great-great-great-grandfather owned cornfields, and he bequeathed land to all of his children. We populated Iowa. When I get off an airplane, everyone looks like me. Everyone. The first red delicious apple tree came from a neighboring field in, right there. There you go. The first red delicious apple tree came from a neighboring field. Jesse Hyatt, when he was near 70 years old, he won a competition by Stark Nurseries for this beautiful red and golden striped apple that he tried to chop down that tree twice, and it just kept growing back. And he was nearly 70 when he won that competition. So it's in my genes. My father moved my family when my mother was pregnant with me to the arid deserts of Arizona and Nevada, and the farmer never left him. It never left our blood. I remember planting an avocado seed with my dad in Tucson, Arizona, and tenderly, lovingly taking care of that little tree. When we moved to Nevada, my sister and I, we planted a garden, and my father thought it would be really cute to buy a grown watermelon from the store and stick it in our garden and let us believe that we did that overnight. So, something that I know in my core is the power of one seed, one voice. Our pioneer ancestry here in Utah pulled carts, sometimes barefoot, to get here. It was not an easy journey. There are thousands of unmarked graves along the trail that they called the Golden Trail, because what they brought with them were seeds, and they'd fall from the carts, they'd get stuck in the ruts in the wheels, and those seeds would litter that path, and that was how they found their way to the west, was following this golden trail. It was black-eyed Susans and dandelions. When I was 25 years old, I was watching the news, and I was horrified by a story of a 7-year-old boy that was abducted and brutalized and survived the most heinous sexual attack I'd ever heard of. I got on the phone during the news broadcast, before it even completed, and I was put in touch with other families that felt the same. I became overnight, the voice in victim advocacy work in the state of Washington. I knew nothing at the time. Within 1 year, we passed an omnibus bill that changed the laws in Washington state. It became the model for the rest of the country. We changed, me and my one voice, changed the legal landscape of our nation. When I was 26 years old, I attempted suicide. I didn't want anybody to know. I survived this, and I had an extraordinary near-death experience. But when I discovered that other people were killing themselves and I wanted to do something about that, I actually got on my knees and said, what can I do? And it came very clearly to me, you could write a book. Within 3 days, my story was sold to Bantam for $300,000. Within 4 months, my story was on bookstore shelves around the world. It's been 20 years since that book came out, and I receive email daily from people who did not take their lives because me, my one voice, terrified that everybody was going to know that I attempted suicide. I have saved thousands, if not millions, of people with my one voice. Just yesterday, I Skyped with a woman in Denmark who read my book just a couple years ago, and it helped her heal from her mother's death. My one voice. So consider the dandelion. One dandelion in 1 week's time has the power to populate your yard. In another week, the street. One dandelion has the power to populate the entire globe. Martin Luther King, with his one voice, he wielded his one voice, and he changed this world. Gandhi, with his voice, his one voice, wielding his one voice, he changed the world. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here. You, your one voice, you have the power to alter our collective destiny. This isn't a tree hugger issue. This is everybody's issue. Lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, and fear of speaking out, that is the lid on change. Being a pioneer was never comfortable. It was never easy. We live in a country where free speech we're founded on the power of free speech. Your voice is heard every time you're at the checkout at the grocery store. You are voting. Share Food Inc. It takes 2 hours to watch that thing. Educate your friends, educate your family, educate your neighbors, because once you know, once you see what is going on, you expand your context and you can no longer go back. You can't unsee. You cannot. Choose one thing. You know, there's this joke about Whole Foods being a whole paycheck, you know, that it's expensive to eat organic. It's expensive to eat from your local farmers. It's expensive. Choose one thing. Start with one thing. Buy organic eggs grown locally, right? $3 a dozen instead of $1.28. Choose one thing. Start there. If you can't give up the rest of it, start there. Start with one thing. Because your one voice with one thing can be heard and change the world. Your word is a seed, and once spoken, you have the power to populate the globe. Thank you.